Welcome back to a brand new video. I'm BraveX Hero, and today we've got a solar build that's gonna melt your face. Do you like using your abilities? Do you like spamming your abilities? This build does it all. All I ask is that if you enjoyed today's video, do me a favor and drop a like. If you're new, subscribe for more Destiny 2 content. Now let's turn up the heat with today's build. Now today's build revolves around the Sunbreaker subclass. And yes, we're gonna be utilizing the Burning Maul, aka I'm running around with a big old hammer. What I really like about this build is you can mix and match any of the abilities, and let me explain. Since this build revolves around spamming your abilities, you have a choice between the Rally Barricade and the Towering Barricade. Yes, you can choose either or. I personally went with the Rally Barricade. Since we are dealing with PVE enemies, we want to be able to pop our barricade and stand behind it while dealing damage. Now we're unable to do that with the Towering Barricade since it blocks your vision, which is why Rally Barricade is worth it, but you can run either or. Now when it comes to choosing a melee ability, to make this build work, you need to utilize Throwing Hammer. Keep in mind there's several reasons we're using Throwing Hammer, and I'll explain that later in the build. Moving into our grenade, you can use any option. And since we have the mod Rain of Firebolts, when you have Firebolts equipped, you gain a second charge. You can really benefit from 2 Firebolt charges. But as someone who really likes solar grenades, it's hard for me to choose any other option, even if it means 2 Firebolt grenades. So I went with Solar Grenade. Our first fragment is Soul Invictus. Solar ability Final Blows, Hammer of Soul Impacts, and defeating scorched targets creates sunspots. What if I told you that this build is gonna create a ton of sunspots? Lastly, when you're in those sunspots, your abilities regenerate faster and your super drains more slowly when you're standing in that sunspot. Let's not forget that sunspots apply scorch and deal damage to targets inside of it. Entering a sunspot applies restoration. Our second fragment is Roaring Flames. Final Blows with solar abilities or solar ignitions increases the damage of your solar abilities, stacks 3 times. Now quickly covering the fragments, we have Ember of Resolve. Solar Grenade Final Blows cure you. Next over, we have Ember of Blistering. Defeating targets with solar ignitions grants grenade energy. Next over, we have Ember of Singeing. Your class ability recharges faster when you scorch targets. Now our last fragment is Ember of Searing. Defeating scorched targets grants melee energy and creates a fire sprite. Now all those fragments are going to synergize extremely well with the exotics of choice. Let's talk about our first exotic, which is going to be none other than the Kephri's Horn. This exotic helmet comes with the exotic perk Solar Rampart. Solar damage kills recharge your barricade, which unleashes a blast of solar energy when summoned. This is a really fancy ability. When you activate your barricade, you'll see a firewall shoot out. It goes one direction and it'll return back to the wall, thus being able to deal damage in 2 directions. Moving into our exotic weapon of choice, we have none other than the Prometheus Lens. This weapon has a lot going for it, and not only that, this season Bungie added a lot of changes to this weapon. First of all, it comes with the perk Flame Refraction. Kills with this weapon return a fraction of the ammo used to the magazine from reserves, extending the beam's duration. Essentially meaning every time I get a kill with Prometheus Lens, it'll auto reload itself, thus allowing me to continuously fire this weapon. Next over, it has Prismatic Inferno. Fires a solar trace beam that creates a field of heat energy that grows as the weapon is fired. Sustained damage applies scorch to the target. Now there's several things to break down in that statement. Number 1, if you pair Prismatic Inferno and Flame Refraction, every time you get a kill with Prometheus Lens, it'll auto reload, thus allowing you to hold the trigger down to create that massive energy beam. Lastly, sustained damage applies scorch to that target, meaning every time you lay down on that trigger, you're applying scorch to the enemy target. When I said Prometheus Lens got buffed this season, it got buffed. It now comes with the perk Incandescent. Defeating a target spreads scorch to those nearby. More powerful combatants and opposing guardians cause scorch in a larger radius, essentially meaning you're able to stack Incandescent, Prismatic Inferno, and Flame Refraction on top of each other. But now before we get into the gameplay loop, let's talk about the mods we're using for today's build. For starters, on our exotic the Kephri's Horn, we're utilizing 1 Solar Siphon mod, 1 Special Ammo Finder mod, and 1 Special Ammo Scout mod. The reason we're utilizing the Solar Siphon mod is because every time we get Final Blows with the Prometheus Lens, we want to generate an orb of power. Now, the reason we're utilizing a Special Ammo Finder and a Special Ammo Scout is because we want to abuse the Prometheus Lens as much as possible. Essentially, we want to get as much ammo as we can. Now moving into our gauntlets, we want to utilize 3 impact induction mods, causing damage with a melee attack reduces your grenade cooldown. Now here's the cool thing about this mod. It works hand in hand with the throwing hammer, essentially meaning every time you throw that hammer at an enemy and you deal damage, this is going to activate the impact induction mod. As you can tell from the footage in the background, every time I throw my hammer at this enemy, even though I'm not killing the enemy, I'm getting a faster cooldown on my grenade. Now moving into our chest piece, we want to utilize 2 solar reserves. This is going to increase the amount of ammo we carry for our solar weapons, which is going to allow us to carry over 500 rounds for the Prometheus lens, thus allowing us to treat the Prometheus lens like a primary weapon. Next over, we want to utilize 1 charged up mod. This is going to increase the number of stacks of armor charges we can carry by 1. Now throughout this entire build, you probably feel like the Prometheus lens is being overused and it's going to be deadly. And to be honest with you, yes, we're going to abuse the hell out of that Prometheus lens, but we're going to make it even deadlier. On our leg armor, we want to utilize 2 solar weapon surge mods, which allows our solar weapons to gain a small bonus to damage while we have an armor charge active. Our last mod on our leg armor is going to be solar scavenger. Solar weapons gain bonus reserves when picking up ammo used by that weapon. Essentially, every time we pick up more green ammo, this is going to give us additional ammunition for our Prometheus lens. Now when it comes to our Titan mark, we want to utilize 1 time dilation mod, essentially increasing the timer on our armor charges. Next over, we want to utilize 1 special finisher mod. This is going to consume 3 stacks of armor charge, but when we perform a finisher, this is going to generate green ammo for our Prometheus lens, allowing us to use it more often. Lastly, we're utilizing 1 bomber mod. Every time we activate our class ability, which is going to be often, this is going to give us a faster cooldown on our grenade. As for my stat distribution, I went with a tier 9 resilience and a tier 7 recovery. The higher resilience you have, the more damage you can take in PVE. Also, the Titan's class ability is tied to the resilience. So the higher resilience you have, the faster cooldown you'll have on your Titan barricade. But to be honest, for today's build, you're gonna have a barricade no matter what. To simplify the stat distribution for you, I recommend high resilience and high recovery, especially for PvE activities. Now the gameplay loop is really simple. It all revolves around the Prometheus lens. Every time you get a kill with Prometheus lens, this is gonna charge your barricade. Why? Because of Kephri Horn's exotic perk, Solar Rampart. Solar kills recharge your Solar Blast barricade. But let's not forget that it also stacks on top of Ember of Singeing. Your class ability recharges faster when you scorch targets. Remember, the Prometheus lens now scorches nearby targets because of the perk Prismatic Inferno. Now we are going to be getting a bunch of kills with Prometheus lens, and this is going to activate the Solar Siphon mod, generating an Orb of Power. When we pick up that Orb of Power, this is going to activate Solar Weapon Surge, giving us bonus damage for the Prometheus lens. And yes, that timer is extended because of time dilation. Not only are we generating an Orb of Power for multi-kills with Prometheus lens, but we're also activating Ember of Searing. Defeating scorched targets grants melee energy and creates a fire sprite. Not only are we getting a faster cooldown on our Titan barricade, but we're also getting a faster cooldown on our melee ability. Keep in mind that every time you throw that baby hammer around and you pick it up, you'll get a burst of cure, giving you a little bit of health. On top of that, every time you deal damage with that baby hammer, you're going to activate Impact Induction, giving you a faster cooldown on your grenade ability. Let's not forget that every time you get a kill with that baby hammer or any ability, you're going to activate Sol Invictus, creating a sunspot in the area where you kill that enemy. And when you stand in that sunspot, you're going to have a faster cooldown on all your abilities. Now, if that wasn't enough for you, you'll always have Ember of Blistering picking up the remaining slack. Defeating targets with Solar Ignition grants grenade energy. Now, I will say you might run out of ammunition with the Prometheus lens, and that's okay. Since we're utilizing Special Finisher, if you have 3 stacks of armor charge, just conduct a finisher on any enemy, and this is going to generate more ammunition for your Prometheus lens, allowing you to use it more often. And there you have it, the Titan build that demolishes PvE. Look, I'd be lying if I said you're not going to get tired of using your abilities, because you are. When you have a Titan barricade every other second, and you have a melee ability that's always there, and you're chunking grenades left and right, it gets pretty exhausting. But hey, that's the power fantasy of Destiny 2. But if you enjoyed today's video, do me a favor and drop a like. If you're new to the channel, hi, I'm BraveXHero and I cover everything Destiny 2 related. Thank you so much for hanging out. You have a good one, and I will see you in the next video.